What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And today, of course, we're taking a look at Doom for the Nintendo Switch. Now, strange, I've been looking forward to this game for a real long time. I enjoyed the hell out of Doom, and even with the new concessions, to me at least, it was still really cool to see it on a Nintendo system. And the fact that the Switch has everything that the main game had, like the DLC and the multiplayer and the 10 to 15 hours of campaign, all sort of packaged in one, it was actually awesome, even with the lowered expectations, and really promised, I think, to be a good time if everything came together well. If everything came together well. Yeah, let's see if it did. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Doom on the Switch. The difference between low texture setting and no texture setting, 30 FPS not locked, and the first game legally okay to be an optometrist's eye test. Graphics are up first. So at first glance, and really in some of the levels, it's pretty well done with the entire design from the larger versions fitting into the Switch, and movement has a good sense of speed even on the smaller screen. Also, when you get up close and personal and you're pulling off killing moves, it's really cool to think, man, I'm on the shitter and I'm playing Doom. Who would have thought that was actually going to happen? Unfortunately, that's pretty much where the good stuff ends. First, it has horrid texture loading. It's spotty pretty much everywhere, and sometimes it won't load some slightly more detailed texture ever on a large part of the level, or flickers out at a distance of maybe an arm's length if your arms are about 6 inches long. Add to that the fact that the game runs at an ultra low resolution all the time, whether docked or undocked, which is not really unheard of, but you add in the horrendous blur system, the low detail textures, and a frame rate that really has an issue staying at 30, and you have a good deal of technical problems. And when playing this thing in portable mode, the UI isn't scaled at all, resulting in very hard to read moments in the options and in the data you get. Luckily, many folks have actually mentioned this, so I'm hopeful that'll be patched. This might sound like a ton of bad stuff, and there is a ton of bad stuff, but there's also some good stuff. For example, once again, you're up in front and center in the anarchy, like you're filming the world's worst 4th of July accident. Explosions turn enemy bodies into undefinable blocks of flesh, and special effects flow liberally, and the color work continues to really be fantastic. I adore their subtle use of color to delineate danger in different areas. Also, make no mistake, the game looks phenomenally better on the small screen than it does on the larger one. Since the performance difference seems to be about 0, the only real bonus of playing on the larger screen is controller input if you have the Switch controller. And to me, that sort of shines a light on where a lot of the problems with this version starts. The game isn't designed well for either portable or docked, and it's not really designed for both. In fact, it's like they didn't know what to do. Play in portable and you may have issues with seeing various elements in the HUD, but the game just flat out looks better. Play in larger screen and the action might be a bit more presentable and the control might be better, but it looks terrible blown up. And the FPS issues are even more noticeable, of course, on a bigger screen. So for me, I would probably suggest portable if you're going to get this. Let's talk about frame rate. The game shoots for 30, something many would have an issue with regardless if it was locked, and it's not. In fact, at times it feels like the game is confused and appears to want to lock at 25, because anytime more than a handful of creatures enter your vision and weapons start shooting, the FPS dips to that number a stunning amount of times. And on the higher difficulties, when everything is jam-packed together, so much easier, or when you're traveling into the later levels and the weapons begin throwing out screen effects, it can actually look downright nasty. Try out the arcade mode, for example, and the damned FPS feels like you're playing your high school friend's drawing, those ones that they do on the corner of a piece of paper and then they flip through it to make it look like a moving picture. It can be atrocious at times, and yes, this is fully patched up. Then there's the motion blur, which I solidly believe is designed to hide the known FPS issue, but looks horrible. Now, thankfully, it's adjustable. The levels are off, low, medium, or high, or as I like to call them, acceptable, glaucoma, Vaseline, or just close your damn eyes, because they are nasty. Despite any issues with a less fluid game, if it's off, it's massively more acceptable than the blurry mess the game is going to deliver, especially with it set to high. But hey, you know what? There's nothing like giving demons an even better chance at killing you by thrusting your head in a vat of Vaseline like a damned apple dunking contest, so who knows, maybe you'll like that. As a package, I'd say this: despite the fact that it's out on any other version, there's a lot of people who are going to go out and get this who've never played a Doom before. And then there's going to be the people who have played a Doom before and want to play it again portably. It's not up to snuff regardless, and either way, especially when it's blown up, which can look stunningly bad. I mean, it's just incredibly disappointing unless your measure of success is, they did it, and a thumbs up JPEG, but that doesn't make any sense at all. Sound, music, and voice.
We cannot conduct our work without them.
And what kind of work is it that you're doing, Olivia?
haven't seen a report from your team in months now, have I? Can I trust that you can maintain your distance and control the situation?
Of course. I believe in our...
And let's do sound first. Sadly, this also doesn't fare well, and it has a number of odd audio bugs. As I said in the other review, sound in Doom 3 is a third arm or a third leg. It keeps the player alive, sometimes by sheer audio alerts that sort of tell you, leave this space now, or yep, it's not actually safe here either. And it's got great separation and layering at times here on the Switch. But it also has a fair number of bugs. The original did not. Sometimes a droning sound would just come out of the Switch like a sound effect was stuck, and other times, even when pumped through HDMI to the home system, the audio in large explosive areas would sound incredibly compressed and layered down. I guess I'd just say, when it's working, it works fine, but there are a lot of little issues. Music. So this, of course, is a highlight. You either love Mick Gordon's hard-hammering soundtrack or you don't, but hearing it pumping out of the Switch is pretty cool. And once again, the stingers and the change-ups are done well, and you have those moments where you've unleashed your last shotgun blast into the face of an apparently invulnerable demon, and you're sprinting around an obelisk, reloading it, and this sweet music just sort of rolls up perfectly. Dynamic music isn't always the easiest to pull off, but Mick nails it. Voice. So yeah, this is done pretty well. It's a little bit above B level, but it's certainly not something you would expect from, let's say, a major Hollywood production. It's still fairly well done, and the emotional resonance in people's voices seem to work out pretty well. You also hear a lot of it depending on what you're doing in each level and the different story elements, and to me, I felt that those were all delivered really solidly. Gameplay, and of course, a bit about the story. So you're a dude who's told to kill the enemies in a complex where demons have taken over, and that's pretty much it for the story, at least at the starting. And it's not really something that we're probably going to care for when it comes to Doom. Now, from that point on, you're flying through levels, bashing, smashing, slicing, dicing, shooting, exploding, and electrifying enemies with an assortment of weapons that would make the FBI nervous. And that's when the game is at its best, when you're sitting back and you're almost on automatic, sprinting through the levels at full speed, because nothing in this game spells END like not moving. You need to move at all times, fighting, retreating, attacking, advancing, and shifting to better positions, always. And of course, while you're doing this, it's throwing out different weapons at you like a demonic Easter egg hunt. And as you're playing, you're also unlocking upgrades to those weapons as well. For example, like a 3-shot burst for your shotgun or explosives. And those can be switched out in real time depending on the enemies you're facing. And trust me, you will 2, 3, 10 times during a battle. That's where really any version of this Doom game is going to be at its best. Now, let's talk a little bit about control. With the Switch in hand, the game controls okay. There's a very odd throw issue, though, with the movement on the thumbsticks, where the fidelity seems to drop off and it goes from a slow walk to a sprint faster than I would have liked. It's sort of a larger spread there than feels comfortable. Now, that's okay for a game like Doom because you are sprinting around all the time, but it can feel a little bit odd, especially when you come up to a tunnel and you're finger and fondling and rubbing and brushing up against this wall while the demons are sort of shrugging at you, thinking, thanks, man, for just sort of standing there. My suggestion is you spend a good time in the options section adjusting the sensitivity and movement if you don't plan on using the separate Switch controller. And as I said, this has almost everything from the PC and the console versions except for Snap Map, so you're looking at 10 to 15 hours for your campaign, depending. And of course, a lot of that is just going to be balls to the walls, death parkour, metal grinding, killing, and I love that about Doom, regardless of the version. Here's the thing though, just putting a game onto another system is not something that should ever be rewarded. Hell, many consumers won't even know that's been on another system. You have to look at each one in their discrete ways. And the fact is that this has a ton of problems. Now, yes, it is playable for the most part, but it also has a ton of frame rate issues, far more than a game like this actually should have. And that includes with the concessions already made. Also, it has various bugs, and that means it's painful to play regardless if you have the past versions as a comparisons point. Disappointing, to say the least. Fun factor. So in the original versions, I was absolutely blown away. The game played well, and it felt like everything you did was rewarded with just a bit more life, and that continued cycle of metal Shirley MacLaine killtastics was fantastic, and I enjoyed it. Here, though, it's nothing like that. Listen, some are going to say, man, they did it. They got Doom onto the Switch at least. Sure, that's sort of like saying my kidnappers only beat me on Wednesdays. You don't celebrate that. It's ridiculous, and so is the performance of this game. Cutting FPS in half is fine. The system needed that, no problem. Throwing in low PC settings is fine. The system needed that, no problem. You're trying to get it to look at least somewhat like the other games, but still run well. But that's the problem. The game actually doesn't run that well. This is a game where the keywords are rip and tear, and that's pretty much what the frame rate's doing through a lot of it. And it's all about movement and speed. The fact that you can pull off the same moves is awesome at times, but the fact that it actually can look horrible for a lot of that time and can't keep a steady frame rate, and even when it does, it has audio bugs or issues with control, is a little bit criminal. It's shoddy. Its performance isn't up to snuff, even with the massive concessions. And celebrating not meeting goals at all, especially the ones the base game is going to hinge on, like your speed and so forth, should never, ever be done. Really, honestly, it needed probably 2 or 3 months more work. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. And this is a rent or a deep, deep sale, technically. You know, the problem is that there's a lot to like in the Doom game originally, and some of that gets translated over, and of course different people are going to accept it more than others. So it's not something where you can say it's a never touch, because with a couple patches you could have a frame rate that is actually totally fine. The problem is they're asking for your money right now, and right now I would only get it on a deep, deep sale. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patron. That's how I continue to give you guys reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullshit. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.